for state standards. Many of the problems with C-scope transferred right over to Common Core. So we started to do research. We spent the next few months doing research, writing letters. It started out with letters to our legislators from Washington on down to the local level, to the PTA presidents, to our local boards of education, freeholders, anybody you could think of. From all those letters that went out, the first batch that went out, there were over 40 letters, and we got exactly 4 responses. And they were mostly canned responses. 1 or 2 had a few personal comments, and that was about it. So Jen told us, I can't let this slide, I have grandchildren. And we did realize, as all of us grandmothers, that young parents are very busy these days. They really don't have time to do a lot of research and look into these things, even though their children are affected. We knew that because we spent our, the last 20 or 30 years running our kids to every game, play, concert, whatever else was out in the universe. So we know how busy they are. So we started to research ourselves. From that, we went to our freeholder board, and we asked them to look into it. We said, we're not experts. We elected you to represent us, and please, we would like you to look into this, which I'm happy to say they did. We went to our state senator, Senator Van Drew, and we told him what we were learning, and we told him how we wanted to learn, and we said, we need to have a bill to stop this. We actually wrote a bill. Just grandparents. We actually went online and figured out how to write a bill, and we wrote a bill, and took it to them and said, here it is. We'll make it easy for you. We went to submit this. Well, it didn't exactly work that way, but Senator Van Drew did write the bill. During our journey, we who are just ordinary citizens, not public speakers, not professionals in this field, have traveled up and down the state. I have a folder this thick with map press directions from all the places that we have traveled. We did presentations. Jen developed a PowerPoint presentation. Now she has 2 PowerPoint presentations. We've developed instructions for people how to go to your school board and do a presentation, how to address your school board. We've done things we never thought we would do. The journey's taken us places we never thought we would go. I'm happy to report to you that the bill that Senator Van Drew initially drafted was also submitted as an assembly bill, identical bill, which passed our state assembly overwhelmingly. It was a 74 to 2 vote. Overwhelmingly it passed. We know that the bill in the Senate, it's Senate Bill S2154, had the votes to pass. We had the votes. It was posted, it was scheduled for a vote 3 different times. And all 3 times, our state Senate President, Senator Sweeney, pulled the bill and did not allow it to come to the floor for a vote. While this was happening, he was in communication with Governor Christie, who is pro-Common Core because he is on the National Governors Association, and they are for it. So they made a backward deal between the governor, the Senate President, and the New Jersey State Board of the teachers union leadership, not the teachers, the leadership, did a bill, and they came up with an executive order. It's Executive Order 159 that the governor put forward and signed. That executive order is a tiny sliver of the pie of what the bill represented. It is also a temporary thing. All it basically addressed was it does create a commission, which to our knowledge, because we're in communication, that commission has not been set in place yet, but they are supposed to give their first report by December 31st. It separates for 1 year the connection between the teacher's evaluation and the student's test scores for 1 year. It's only a temporary pause. Another aspect that you may want to inform the teachers about, besides emphasizing with them that that executive order is only good for 1 year, you might also want to emphasize with them that executive orders sometimes sunset when the governor leaves office. If it's not reinstated by the next governor, it goes away. So teachers, even that one little sliver that their union leaders got for them, very likely will go away, and they'll be right back where they started. So that has brought us to the position of where we are today. We are doing our utmost to educate people about Common Core, about all the research and the evidence that we have found that cause great concern. And it was the symposium today. We now have gone to another level because we desperately have parents. We do house parties. If anybody has children or anybody you know who would be, I call them cupware parties, who would be interested in inviting a handful of other parents of children into their home, we will come into their home and do a presentation in their home. We will do whatever we can think of, whatever it takes to educate people in the state of New Jersey to get this school back. With that, I'm going to give you Lynn Shirk, who would like to speak to you as well.
We'd like to thank the Cayman County Board of Freeholders for listening to. Okay. We'd like to thank the Cayman County Board of Freeholders for listening to us about Common Core and then looking into it. They were the first to write a resolution to compare the Common Core state standards with the New Jersey standards. 4 other counties have since passed resolutions. They are Morris, Bergen, Henderson, and Warren counties. Now, the New Jersey school boards from Wayne Township, Ramapo Indian Reservation, Board of Education, and Washington Township have passed resolutions opposing the Common Core state standards. We'd like to thank all of you who have cared enough to look into and investigate the standards. Debbie?
I hope you all enjoyed your lunch. Back to business now. I'm a retired educator. I was a math teacher for years, and I was the one that kept saying to them, oh no, I don't believe that. That's not true. And they were on my back saying, you gotta listen to us, you gotta listen to us. So anyway, we went to the Cumberland County Board of Freeholders, and one of the commissioners' sidekicks came down and gave a presentation which was against everything everybody's been hearing, and I was thinking, maybe we're wrong. So we went out and talked to her in the hall. Well, we weren't wrong. I asked her this one question, being a math person. I said, I look at your program and I can't see how it's going to work. Everything I saw in the 28 years that I taught was not, it just wouldn't work. I tried a few other things. And she said, I said, so tell me where you piloted this so I can go and see, how it worked. And she said, oh, it's never been tested. This is experimental. Well, that's all I had to do. I was right on board with everybody. So it's unbelievable that they're doing this without any testing. It's just over the top. I want to give you a couple of things that you might do in the future. The new president of the NEA, Lily Garcia, is, if you Google her, you will come up with a lot of things. She was on MSNBC the other day with Scarborough, forget the person. And she did a very nice presentation. She is not against the standards, but she's against teaching to the test. So you might look her up and see what she's saying, which is a positive. She's starting to swing to our side. And then also there's a Carol Burris, B-U-R-R-I-S, that is a former teacher that is now a writer, and she has written a number of articles for different papers. One was the Washington Post. Another thing, and this is one of our members here, one of our guests here today, which I've known in the past, reminded me that we can all be members of the PTA, and we could become a member of the National PTA. Then we could get involved in our local schools with the PTA, because they're the people we'd like to get to, because then we can get to the parents. We wrote a letter, as Michelle had already said, to every school in Cape May County, and addressed it to the president of the PTO, and we heard, PTA, and we heard nothing back. So that's one thing. There are three things that you could do when when you get home. I want to just leave you with this idea, and you've heard this from our speakers. This was written by people that were business people, not educators. Just picture, you're in a room with a bunch of educators, teachers, administrators, and they ask us to write the standards for the local hospital. How many people do you think we would kill? So, make the point that they took business in to write the standards. How many children's creativity are they going to kill?
Hope everybody's having a great day. Women have had a great morning. We're having a better afternoon. Everybody really covered sort of everything that we've done up to this point. At the beginning of the program, we flashed up on the screen a phone number, and we asked you all to write it down. And now I'm going to tell you what that phone number is. That phone number is for Senator Stephen Sweeney and in West Deptford. Now, after our bill was supposed to have been posted 3 times, and it didn't make it to the floor for a vote, even though we know we had votes to pass it, both Democrats and Republicans, bipartisan all the way, he did not post it. That's what, and we were told that he wasn't going to do it by the senator. He's not going to post your bill. The governor's going to do an EO, and everybody's going to be happy, teachers are going to be happy, and we said, but we're not happy. And we voted for these people that are in the Senate and the Assembly. So we're not happy. So what can we do now? And he said, well, your bill's not dead. Well, I said, it's just sort of laying there. What can we do? And he said, let's give the governor a chance to come around, see what he's going to do. So far, we have submitted names for him to submit for his new study commission. Haven't heard a word. And the bill is still laying dormant. So what do we need to do? The phone number you have, Senator Sweeney, we have to nail him. We have to bug him. We have to call, fax, write, and tell him we want the bill posted for a vote. And if it passes in the Senate, it already passed the Assembly, Michelle alluded to, then it'll go forth and the governor will veto it. We don't care if he vetoes it, bring it back. We need 3 Republicans, who I might add, most of them co-sponsored the bill. Let them tell us they're not going to push for an override. We elected them to do our business. So now it's up to them to do it. Or we won't vote for them. These are our children. This is the most important issue that faces our country since Obamacare. Only I think this is worse. And I'm not supposed to say that, but I believe that it is. I believe that, going forward, the generations to come, my grandchildren just walked in and they got pulled out the door. I fear for what they're facing. They're facing it now. The bill number, the Senate bill number is S2154, and then it's to establish a task force to examine Common Core state standards. And the primary sponsor is Senator Jeff Van Drew. The Assembly Bill 3081 was already passed. So how I understand it, they merge them together and then present them as one. Those numbers have changed over the past 2 years. But along with Senator Sweeney, out in the lobby area, we have lists assembled of all the state senators. For your information, take one with you. Just take a day and call them. Say, we support Senate Bill 2154. to establish a task force, and let's get it done. We can get it done. The school boards have the power. Here we go. The school boards have the power. They just don't use it. We were told many times, we've been to a lot of school board meetings where, and you know, some freeholder meetings, not ours, of course. They listen to everything we say. Well, we've been to several of them, and two in particular who promised to do resolution and promised me personally, on such and such a date, you're going to have a resolution. I said, well, I might be away that day. That's okay. I'm going to send it to you. And then on that very day, they said, oh, well, you know, we think it's going to be tabled now. And I found out a couple days later that those school boards, those freeholders boards, received letters from the Commissioner of Education office telling them that Cape May County was misinformed. So don't be doing any resolution. I have those letters. I have a file that says strong arming letters. Because that's how I feel we have been, you know, we've been strong armed into, they have been, not to write resolutions to support our bill. Because, and there were about 3 or 4. I don't want to name the counties. I mean, okay. Salem County, Cumberland County, Atlantic County, Ocean County were 4 that we presented to. We gave them all of our research information that came from a lot of these folks. Oh, Gloucester County, sorry, where is it? Jack. Gloucester County, I mean, a lot of these boards listened to us, gave us our 5 minutes. When that 5 minute was up, you're done. Thank you very much. But never asked a question, didn't want to know anything. Said they were uninterested. Well now, you know, fast forward a year later, everybody's getting interested, and I can see it around the room. So thank you so much all for being here. And please, take those list of senators, call them, especially Senator Sweeney, because he holds in the palm of his hand to go forward. And you know it's bipartisan because Senator Sweeney's a Democrat, Governor's a Republican, the senator that wrote the bill is a Democrat, and the whole Republican Assembly and Senate agree. Common Core is not a good thing. And the teachers hate it. And we know that for a fact also. So thank you very much.
One more point. To have the greatest impact on Senator Sweeney, we are asking that you make that call to him on Monday and Tuesday, the 19th and 20th. I'm sorry, the 29th and 30th, excuse me, the 29th and 30th this month. Today's the 27th, today's this month. If all of us would just make even that one phone call on those 2 days, that would have an impact. That would have an impact. And if you can call all your relatives and give them the phone number and ask them to call, and your friends, or if you know your student's teacher is against it and they are not afraid, which is something we run into, teachers feel intimidated when they're against Common Core. They will not come forward. We've been to presentations where they will not sign our sign-in list because they're afraid that their name's being seen by someone. So anyway, we're asking you the 29th and the 30th, Monday and Tuesday, please, all of you, call Senator Sweeney and tell him we want S2154 to be brought to the floor and voted on. And that will have an impact.
By the way, the governor, the lieutenant governor, Senator Sweeney, and all the co-sponsors of our bill were formally, by formal invitation, invited to this event today. I got 3 RSVPs, that was it. So they completely ignored the invitation. We'd like to let them know that.
Now our next speaker is Thomas Borelli, Dr. Thomas Borelli. He's a managing partner of the investment advisory firm of Action Fund Management, LLC, a portfolio manager for the Free Enterprise Action Fund, and a senior fellow with the National Center for Public Policy Research. Dr. Borelli began his career as a microbiologist with General Foods, where he provided safety assessments for new products and also conducted basic research in biotechnology. He served as science fellow for the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Science, Space, and Technology during the 100th Congress. Dr. Borelli has published scientific papers on interferon and human leukemia. He received his Bachelor of Science in Microbiology from Michigan State University and his Master of Science and PhD in Biochemistry from New York Medical College. I'd like to introduce Dr. Thomas Borelli.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here we go. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here today. And this afternoon, as you're trying to recover from all the sugar now in your system, before you go to sleep, I'm going to connect a few dots. Okay? I'm going to provide the big picture view of how and why you're here today, how and why you're fighting Common Core. Common Core is a symptom of a much bigger problem that we're facing today in the United States. When you analyze it, we have Common Core because a billionaire, Bill Gates, liked it, and he used his massive sums of money to drive it throughout the United States. It's as simple as that. Bill Gates represents the symptom of a much larger disease. The disease is that way too much of our public policy is being driven by a small group of people that decide what they're going to do to us. They decide what they want, and we, the people, are supposed to accept it. The prevailing attitude from people like Gates is that they're smarter than we are. And smart people need to organize things. They just need to. And we're the average people, and we're just too stupid to figure out things on our own. So while many Americans are distracted, aligning their fantasy football teams every week, watching the Housewives of New Jersey, or watching ESPN, the smart people are organizing our lives for us. And the elites, they're designing the world according to what they want, according to their liking, and actually according to their benefit. What will they get? Some will profit from it, others will derive power from it, and others will increase their standing among the other social elites. That's what they get. And what do we get? We get to deal with the consequences. We get to deal with the consequences and the scraps that they will throw to us. That's what's happening. The elite class really consists of way too many political leaders, both Democrat and Republican. Not political, it's about us and them. Social and business elites. Really, it's really the DC insiders where all that power is concentrated. They wield their influence, which ultimately comes down to more power and more money for them. And these special interest groups, they're counting on Americans essentially being sheep. Just sit back, shut up, and follow. That's what they're counting on. But they don't understand the American people. They don't understand on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, you could pack a room like this to deal with the issues of Common Core. They don't get it, but we will remind them. Before I get to Common Core, I'd like to discuss President Obama's energy policy because it serves as a model for Common Core. Command and control. From the White House, Obama is fundamentally transforming our electricity market. Fundamentally transforming it. The transformation involves regulating the coal industry to death and then replacing it with renewable energy. That's his plan. And he hasn't hit this at all from the American people. It goes back to then candidate Obama in 2008. During an editorial board meeting at the San Francisco Chronicle, he said his energy policy called cap and trade would make electricity prices skyrocket and those costs will be passed on to the consumer. Hello, consumer. That's all of you. And he also said a utility would be free to use coal. However, they would likely go bankrupt because of the cost of using coal. That was his promise in 2008. Obama's energy plan launched a special interest orgy in Washington. A number of big businesses lined up to pass this cap and trade bill. Companies like General Electric saw the collapse of the coal industry as a boom for their renewable energy business, their wind turbines and their solar panels. General Electric and other big businesses established a lobbying coalition and pressed hard to ram cap and trade down our throats. Former Vice President Al Gore is also a fan, or was a fan, of cap and trade. Gore is a business partner in a venture capital firm called Kleiner Perkins. Kleiner Perkins happens to have bet huge in alternative energy. So the big business interests are lining up. And big business influence went beyond normal lobbying and went right to the seat of power in Washington, D.C. Does everybody remember President Obama's Jobs Council? Remember his Jobs Council shovel ready? Do you remember who was the chairman of that Jobs Council? General Electric CEO Jeff Immelt, right at the seat of power. Al Gore's business partner at Kleiner Perkins, billionaire John Doerr. He was another Jobs panel member. GE's Immelt, Doerr, and Gore needed government regulation to make money on their renewable energy investments. They can't compete in a competitive marketplace. So you need to skew the regulatory scales to get rid of coal and replace it with renewable. The lobbying push was huge, but because of a lot of grassroots activists, the cap and trade bill died in the Senate. It passed the House of Representatives. But that did not stop President Obama. He just went on to use the Environmental Protection Agency without any real influence from Congress to pass regulation on utilities and make it too expensive for them to use coal. Now here are the results so far. It's estimated that over 400 coal-fired power plants will be closing in the United States. 2 coal mining companies have gone bankrupt since 2011. The stock prices of the remaining coal companies are being crushed. In Peabody Energy Company, the largest coal company in the United States, in 2011, its share price, its stock price, was $75 a share. When I wrote this speech, it was $13 a share. Yesterday, it was just over $12 a share. Massive destruction in that company. Alpha Natural Resources was selling, another coal company, mining company, was selling for $65 a share. Now it's selling for $2.30 a share. Massive destruction of equity. And electricity prices are going higher. And in fact, we almost had a blackout last winter when the polar vortex ripped through our country. 90% of the coal plants that are going to be closed kept the power on. Lord only knows what's going to happen if we have another really cold snap. Here's the worst part of the story. It is no secret, President Obama, many Democrats are killing the coal industry. The facts are there. The only chance the coal industry has is for the Republicans to take the United States Senate. If Republicans have both the Senate and the House, they can control the money, and by controlling the money, they can control the EPA. But guess what? The United Mine Workers of America, the coal mining union, just endorsed 2 Democrats running for Senate in the coal-dependent states of Kentucky and West Virginia. That's right. Coal miners' money is going to their leaders so that they can lobby and go for political action to put them out of jobs. This is what's happening here in America. And the lessons for all of us here is, if you're not aware of what's going on, and if you're not willing to stand up and fight for your lives and your liberty, they will take it from you. They will. And that's why you're here. And that's why Deneen and I are here. Now, Obama's war on coal shares a very similar pattern with Common Core. Both are derived from this command and control center of public policy, where the elites decide what's going to happen, and then we pay the price. With Common Core, Bill Gates decided to fundamentally transform education. He wanted to establish a uniform national curriculum standards that we've heard from other speakers that were developed without educators that actually know how to educate kids. It all started in 2008. 2008 must have been a bad year, when Obama promised to bankrupt the coal industry, and Bill Gates was being pitched on a new program, Common Core, and how to save our education system. They wanted to solve the problem of the differences in academic standards among the states, and the challenge that some colleges were having with kids coming in who needed remedial education before they could take their advanced college classes. And the variation between states inhibits big business investment in education. So that was the problem they were trying to solve. Now, if you just think about it, from Gates' perspective, mass uniform education standards make sense to Bill Gates, right? How did he make his money? Mass producing software, right? One product fits all. Education, one product fits all. It makes sense when you understand the math. Now, Gates, liking this program, poured huge sums of money to grease the political skids. He donated $200 million to outside groups to promote Common Core. And the money was spread throughout the political spectrum. The United States Chamber of Commerce got money. The progressive group, the Center for American Progress, got money. $2.2 million went to the National Governors Association, Mr. Christie, why is he? To promote it directly to states. And naturally, the Obama administration jumped on board. Why not? Progressive Democrats love central control. If you can control energy, why not control education? Right from central command. Remember the stimulus plan I mentioned before? $787 billion? Well, out of that, the Department of Education, we have way too many departments. The Department of Education had $4.5 billion in race-to-the-top grants to give to states. And for these states to get these grants, they needed to adapt some type of national academic standards. And what was waiting there at the time? Common Core. So the states ran to get this money. They think it's free money, we actually pay for it. And the fastest way to get the money to these money-starved states was to adopt Common Core as the national standard. Naturally, the revolving political doors were swinging. The Gates Foundation executives somehow found jobs in the Department of Education. Imagine that. And the Gates Foundation gave $2.7 million to 24 states to help them to apply for these race to the top grants. See, it's an inside game between a select few. That's what's going on. And the fix was in. And money and influence can work really fast when you're throwing that kind of money around, especially when it's across the political spectrum. Who's going to fight it? Only us will fight it. 45 states ended up adopting Common Core. Now let's get to who developed these Common Core standards. Achieve Inc. is a nonprofit that was the driving force in developing these standards. And where did they get money from? Big business, Microsoft, General Electric. Pearson Publishing was the big winner in these Common Core sweepstakes. Why? They provide the textbooks, they provide the training for teachers. They're the ones that do the tests. The more tests, the more money Pearson gets. This is the scam that's going on. Pearson also got a $3 million grant from the Gates Foundation. Wall Street Journal wrote about Pearson, and the name of the title of the article was, Pearson looks at big profits ahead. And their CEO's quote was, the Common Core standards are affecting every part of the business we're involved in. Big business, big money. And of course it takes big money to implement Common Core. And that becomes a real shortcut to the chosen people. But the pushback against Common Core is really picking up steam. Bill Gates has faced a lot of questions with respect to how much money is Microsoft potentially going to make because of Common Core standards. Microsoft has joined Pearson Publishing to develop Common Core materials and tests and put those materials and tests on Microsoft's tablet that competes with Apple's iPad. So there is a business interest there for Microsoft. But Common Core is another example of the elites attempting to corral the American people in a one-size-fits-all world, to corral us in these pens. It's a world where big business and special interests work together, the elites, to design the world for them and not us. We've seen this scenario play out. Obamacare is another example of command and control healthcare. You will buy that policy whether you need the coverage or not. Energy, as I mentioned, and Common Core, they all have the same big business influence. Now, Common Core threatens the individuality of students and their educational development. And on a personal level, I fear the data collection aspect and the testing will steer children away from their dreams. Test scores do not always reflect an aptitude or understanding of the material, and most certainly, they can never measure the heart, drive, and motivation of an individual. I know that from my own personal experience. I wonder if I would have my PhD in molecular biology if I was educated under Common Core. I was an average student in high school, B. I went to Mount St. Michael Academy in the Bronx. One of the science teachers, the brother, told my parents, I didn't have the aptitude for science. I'd be better off going somewhere else. My SAT scores were average. Not outstanding, they were average. I enrolled in Michigan State University, I majored in microbiology, and I became a B-plus student. While working at General Foods, I enrolled in night school. And through a lot of years and a lot of hard work and a lot of perseverance, I got my master's and PhD in molecular biology. Like Deneen, I took the scenic route. But I wonder if I was labeled in high school as he's not good for science, he should go somewhere else, whether or not that label, that tag, would have followed me to the rest of my life. And that's what's wrong with putting people in pens. You can never measure sheer will and motivation. Can't be done. And frankly, I think people like me scare the elites because they can't control me. They can't. That's why I'm really worried about Common Core from both a national and personal perspective. And to maintain our liberty, we need to have individuals, and individuals like you, who are here willing to fight back. You have the phone number of who's holding this back. You call that man. There's one thing about elites, whether they're business, whether they're political, or whether they're social. They like to give out the money to pass it out to other people to give out the heat. But they can't take the heat. They hate it. And that's why both Deneen and I work for FreedomWorks, because we're grassroots activists. My God, how does a PhD in molecular biology end up being an activist, right? Only because it needs to be done. That's the only reason. So thank you for your time and your attention. God bless you, and God bless America.
Our next speaker is going to be Mr. Vern Williams. Vern received a BS in math education from the University of Maryland in 1972. He has taught math in the Fairfax County, Virginia public school system for over 30 years, and has taught students in the Longfellow Middle School's Gifted and Talented program for over 25 years. In 1990, he was the Fairfax County School Teacher of the Year and received 2 national awards for distinguished teaching from the Mathematical Association of America. He also developed the Honors Math 7 curriculum for gifted Longfellow Middle School 7th graders, which includes concepts from number theory, set theory, mathematical logic, analytic geometry, sequences, series, linear systems, and elementary calculus. Williams' special interest is teaching traditional and rigorous mathematics to gifted middle school students. He currently teaches honors math and the combination algebra geometry. I give you Mr. Vern Williams.
Wants to pursue that STEM career, if they're not getting solid algebra 1 and 2, then what's going to happen when they want to pursue a real pre-calculus and calculus course? Then the door is closed. So I do have some issues with that. But the main problem, I believe, is the way that, I guess you can call them the reformers, the way they're interpreting the standards is they ignore the content standards and they look at the mathematical practices standards. Because most of the mathematical practices can't really be objectively measured. And one complaint I've always had with testing is I want a parent to know what their kid doesn't know, period. And if you make the testing so fuzzy, well, we're going to sort of use portfolios, and the kids are going to put on a play describing what the square root of 2 would look like if it became rational, and other assorted trivia. That the parents are at a loss. And also, just some of the curriculum. When parents complain that I can't do my kid's homework, some of the reform folks look at that as, well, that's because you were brought up back in the dark ages and you just don't understand our sophisticated new understanding approach. And what it really is they don't understand gibberish. And so when you have engineers and scientists and just bright folks in general not being able to help a 5th or 6th grader with homework, there is an issue with the homework, not with the parent. And the testing is the same way. So it scares me how Common Core standards will be tested. Because if they're not tested objectively, if writing is given more importance than the math, then we're going to have an issue. That's another thing that bothers me, not just about Common Core standards, the way they're interpreted, but in general. Mathematics has a rich mathematical vocabulary and a rich procedural technical vocabulary. And I always tell my 7th graders and 8th graders that mathematicians are minimalists. They don't really want to include what they shouldn't include. They want to keep things simple and precise. So when you're learning these symbols that may appear to be gobbledygook to you, what they're doing is they're taking things that can be misinterpreted, refining it into pure math, and they're almost forcing you to do the right thing. If they ask you to list the natural numbers from 6 to 9 using set-builder notation, they are almost forcing you to do that. So what have we been told to do instead in the last 20 or 30 years? Have the kids write books about what they're doing. Instead of having the kids say, I solved the problem, here is my beautiful mathematical work. You are a math teacher. Follow what I'm doing by reading the mathematics. That's all you need to do. No, that's not good enough. You have to write me 5 paragraphs in English describing your thinking to me. It just drives kids nuts when that happens. And again, if the standards are going to be tested that way, then I will have tremendous issues with the test. It even gets worse because then you start using rubrics. What did the child really mean? And I know they got the right answer, but. So you will have students getting the correct answer and getting points off, and students not getting the correct answer and getting more points. And you explained it mathematically, but that's not good enough. I want you to explain it to me using English. And this is what I'm afraid of at the moment. Another thing that bothers me, I'm teaching Virginia, and we are a non-Common Core state. And very proud of it. Don't know how long that's going to last, but as of today, we are not Common Core. And we have something called Standards of Learning, SOLs. And again, I think the standards could be stronger, but the testing of the standards at this point, they are objective. And they require a little bit more writing, or reading, I should say, than I would like. But in general, the mathematics SOLs deal with mathematics much more than they deal with reading. And but even in Virginia, but by the way, they do like to brag and say that our standards can be compared side by side to Common Core, and there is tremendous overlap. And where there is no overlap, of course, Virginia is always better. They like to say that. But one thing that's happening in my school system, and will happen much more with Common Core, is from a teacher's perspective, we are put in a position now where we're being asked to teach exactly the same thing and the same way as every other teacher in Fairfax County. And so if you're teaching Algebra 1, we have this thing called E-card. So every X number of weeks, your kids are tested. And this information is sent to, who knows, where it's sent to. But I know the principal and I know other folks in Fairfax County will see what you're doing approximately every 3 weeks and how your students are progressing. And the point is, they want to make sure that regardless of who a student has for a teacher, they're getting exactly the same education. And in order for that to happen, you do exactly the same thing. And they haven't quite said it yet, but they would really love it if you taught it exactly the same way. And teaching it the same way is not the way that I teach. I guarantee you that's not what they would want. They would want project-based learning, child-centered, everything but teachers standing at the board demonstrating how to do a problem. And that scares me. Common Core scares me that way more than it probably scares you guys. Because as a teacher, I would not want to be forced to be using the same textbook, be on the same page, using the same technique as, say, a teacher in Northern California. Because one reason why I still teach is it's fun. It has to be fun, because I don't get paid enough for it not to be. And if I can't walk into my classroom and simply use my teaching style and really have fun being creative, then that would upset me probably more than anything else concerning Common Core. And if it's already happening on a smaller level in the county where I teach, they would love it if, regardless of what classroom a child walked into, you're doing the same thing, thinking the same way, and teaching the same way as any other teacher. And this is starting to really scare me. One other thing, I hear that Common Core, as far as collecting information, that really upsets you. Well, we have this new student information system. And I want to tell you exactly what it's called. It's called the Integrated Student Information System. All right? Now you think about those words. That's exactly right. The icon on my computer says ISIS. And they discovered that when we came back from summer vacation. We knew it was called that last spring. So they said we're going to have this new amazing student information program. And it will involve grades, how you grade, and everything else. And so there was the icon on our computers, and it's ISIS. So we looked at that the first day we were back and said, how did they let that slip by? Well, I mean, healthcare.gov, they let that slip by. So it didn't really, it doesn't surprise me what happens. But they will change the icon. We got a note about a week ago that they will change the icon. And I'm wondering, how much is that going to cost? Because you have no idea. You think they're just going to go into some little system, press a couple of buttons, and change the icon? That could cost $1 million just to do that easily. So, but the student information system scares me for a lot of reasons. I can click on a student's name now and get tons of information that I don't even want to know about. Now, I don't mind getting to know my students and getting to know their families, but I want it under their conditions. I want the parents to give me information that they think I need, or that they want to give me. And then fine. I love getting to know my students. But I can click on a student's name now and get too much info. And that's just at the teacher level. Any information that I can get, the superintendent can get. And everyone beneath the superintendent can get. And it's to the point now where I will be able to click on a student's name, and on any of that student's classes, not only can I get the student's grade that that teacher gave him or her, I can get every grade that that student got in that teacher's class. So, in essence, I can see all of that student's teacher's grade books. every quiz, every test. And again, if I can see it, everyone can see it. And that doesn't even include all the psychological stuff going on that we just probably don't need to know. So again, if that's nationalized, then that's going to bother me even more. So, yeah, I'm in a tough position here because most people don't know that I was on the Common Core writing team, and almost everyone I know hates Common Core to the passion. And so I don't know really what to do. I mean, do I speak out? And first of all, even if I speak out, I can't tell you what we did. So I'm between a rock and a hard place here. But Sandra, I'm sure, on a couple of a national email list, and all they talk about is how much they hate Common Core. And so the actual content standards aren't as fuzzy as I ever thought they would be. They really aren't. Students do have to do math problems. I mean, you have to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. And it might be later than you want, but you have to do it. When they come to a student will understand, now that upsets a lot of people too, because here we are back to how is it going to be assessed? If a student is, if you're going to test a student on understanding, do you have them write a 2-page paragraph, or, I mean, just exactly what do you do? So that bothers me, but in general, I'm more concerned about the mathematical practices. I run a summer enrichment camp, and about 4 years ago, I gave a problem, hat box problem. It's a problem that I really like. Has nothing to do with real world applications, and that's a whole 2-hour discussion, by the way. I always tell the students, we're told to do real world stuff with you. Where the heck do they think you are now? Cartoon land? I thought school was sort of a part of the real world. But unless we have dumbed down education in the U.S. to the point where we don't expect a student to learn anything unless we can justify that that will be an important part of their life that day. It must help them in life that day, or it's not worth teaching. I convince my students that you learn mathematics, number one, because it's cool, and number two, because it's useful. And one former student, I even have a t-shirt, a student asked, when is this stuff going to be used? And this student was standing next to me when this kid said that. And he said, mathematics is not about things that are useful. It's about things that are cool. And I could have never answered that way. So, yeah, you know, the real world stuff is important, but so is just having a love of mathematics. So there's a problem that I get, and it's 9 times hat box equals 4 times box hat. And the word hat box, H-A-T-B-O-X, is a 6-digit number, okay? And when you switch it around, you just put the box. So if it's 308196, you switch it around and make it 196308. But 9 times hat box must equal 4 times box hat. Really, really cool problem. And it turns out you really don't need advanced math to solve that problem. You just need a general working knowledge of arithmetic. But there was this one student who was very bright, and he understood the problem conceptually to the T. But when you got down to the very, very last part, you had to divide a 4-digit number. I'm trying to remember what the numbers were. I think one was 3991 or something. But you had to divide 2 4-digit numbers by 13. Now, figuring out that you had to divide it by 13 was the hard part. All right, if you got down to that step, wow, that's really cool. He got down to that step, and he could not divide 13 into that number. He had no idea. The only way he could have solved that problem was to subtract 13 from from that number until he got the answer. And I said, but this is the end of 7th grade. And luckily it wasn't my school, but it was Fairfax County School. And I said, how did the teacher let it go that long? Not to mention the 6 prior years. And he said, well, no one, it just never came up. Well, one reason why it hardly ever comes up is because they stick calculators in their hand, so it doesn't have to come up. But I took him in the hall, and it must have been 10 minutes. I showed him how to do long division, and he was just absolutely thrilled. And lived pretty much, I guess, happily ever after, at least with mine did. I was too scared to ask about all the other stuff that he could do arithmetically. But when I do get students in algebra, I just want them to know how to do the arithmetic. I'll take care of the algebra, so that the calculus teachers will stop complaining that the students would do calculus amazingly if they could only do algebra. So that's the big problem. They can't do arithmetic when we're trying to teach them algebra. And when they take these fake, watered-down algebra courses and get A's in them, and then some students, again, a subset of students who want to pursue a STEM career, or just happen to like math and want to take AP or BC calculus, all of a sudden the door is shut because they don't have the algebra skills to do the calculus problem. Most nasty calculus problems turn into really nasty algebra problems. And if you can't do basic algebra, good luck with the calculus. So that's another reason why I hope that Common Core doesn't turn into another one of these, my kid doesn't really need to do math, they just need to sort of understand math and know why it works, but they don't have to make it work. And that is I guess, one of my major concerns. So let's see, in closing, if there's anything in closing, I can't see the sheet of paper. I think I covered just about everything. Yeah, I got the ISIS thing covered. There is one other thing, and I guess 2 things. So Khan Academy, which many of you have heard of, and Saul Khan is a genius, okay? And I will mention to some of my students, you should go to Khan Academy, because if there's a concept you don't quite know, and you can't Google it and understand it still, the Khan Academy is awesome. And what a lot of K-12 folks have done to Khan Academy is that they've turned it into the flipped classroom. So almost everything that's cool, K-12 people can get their hands on it and just totally destroy it. So the flipped classroom now is, I'm Mr. Boring Teacher, okay? I am going to put you to sleep. I've been told not to do that. Everything should be child-centered. So I am going to reform. Instead of me putting you to sleep, I'm going to make a video. And then at night, you watch the video of the lesson, and the following day, I will answer questions. So instead of me boring you and you doing homework, why don't I make a video and bore you at home more than I'm boring you now? Because at least now when I see you going to sleep, I can sort of perhaps change my tone just a little. But the video will never know that. So even if Common Core were the greatest thing ever, I hate to say this because I'm in the profession, they would find a way. They would find a way to mess it up. And the last thing is another K word, Kumon. All right? Oh. I have to tell the parents at back to school night that I have no financial interest in Kumon because I think I mention it every other second. And if, for any reason, any parent thinks that their child is not getting an excellent arithmetic background and they have the funds to do it, send your kid to Kumon. and they're cropping up all over the place. They will beat the man into you and never feel guilty about it. And students in my class, when they go up to the board for the first time and they're just zipping through an arithmetic problem, I always tell them, "You're a Kumon kid, aren't you?" And they tell me two things. Yes, and I hate it. And I said, "But you can do math, can't you?" "Yes, I can do math." So if parents have to understand that unlike pre-Al Gore, when there was no internet, there are other sources now. When the school system is not accomplishing what it should. The one thing that scares me is that in districts and families where they don't have the funds, and maybe the parents aren't at PTA meetings every other week, those are the very kids that I think we should worry about the most. Because students at my school will get an education one way or the other. The parents can afford it. And not only that, they will lobby the school until they get their kids an education. But it's all the districts in the U.S. that have families and kids who don't have those advantages. And those are the ones we have to worry about the most and make sure that in school they do get an excellent background. So that's my opinion.
I'm not going to blame you for my 8-year-old crying every night when she does her Common Core math homework worksheets. It's not your fault. I just had a question, a basic question about how we move from traditional math to reform math, sort of nationwide. Because Common Core, if I understand it right, is kind of based on integrated math or reform math. And most of us in this room had traditional math. What was wrong with traditional math in the first place?
Well, in 1989, NCTM, National Council of Teachers of Math, decided that math as taught in the U.S. was taught incorrectly. And they were going to fix it with the NCTM 1989 standards. And also that math worked, but it only worked for, I don't know, little blonde kids who were ready for calculus. But no one else. It didn't work for minorities, it didn't work for females. So we have to clean up our act and make sure we transform math into something that everyone can do. And what they really meant was transform it into something that everyone could do without having to work. But they left out that part. And so the only way you're going to do that with math sooner or later turns into hard work. I don't care how much you enjoy it. I've worked on problems for days, and they're really cool problems, and I like doing the problem, but it takes work and focus. And the only way you're going to delete the work and the focus is to delete the math. And so what NCTM decided was, we're going to make everything process, and just this simple manipulation and correct answers, and that stuff can be done with a calculator. We just want the kids to be able to discover and construct and think and live wonderfully and do everything in groups and equity, and that's where I think that's where it started with me. And NCTM has come around a little bit more lately, but those original 1989, and they were accepted by, I think my school system still has somewhere on the website that that's how we teach math, based on NCTM standards. I don't even know how they teach math in my school system because I just close my door. It's hard to keep up, but to answer your question, I think that's where it started.
And I want to bring to your attention that it must be fun for all the speakers because none of them were paid to be here and speak. They both